Hey guys, and welcome to episode 2 of Inside the White Mind. So, we're going to talk a little bit about gaslighting and just the inherent gaslighting that is prevalent in white culture. And we're going to talk about how they also taboo certain things and make it so that you won't ever feel comfortable talking about certain things that could be detrimental to the exposure of the nature of the culture itself. So, in the gaslighting sense, I'm going to use a recent example with my mother. I had a bit of a falling out with her recently, and a lot of it was because of just the constant gaslighting and pressure that I would get from her, and just the doubting of my decisions as an adult, and just the subtle racism that pops in and out all the time, and I constantly have to, be like, no, 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 don't be a racist. And it's crazy because she's from Kentucky, born in the South, and she escaped the South. She escaped the trailer park and made it to the city as an artist, and did a lot of great things with art. So in that sense, it was basically a full recovery. She got out of the toxic white culture. But then now, in her later years, just that subtle racism just comes in and out all the time. It's just really kind of concerning, when you get just constant complaints about the coworkers and anybody who does this when they say black people, and look around like they're scared. Yeah, that's an admission of racism on their part. And my mom does that constantly. It would drive me insane. And it even got to a point where I couldn't really comfortably be around her because just the subtle racism was popping up so often all the time. And it made me really not want to be around her. I don't want to be around racists and bigots and just terrible people. So we had a bit of a falling out because I'm moving to Detroit next month, finally, escaping Traverse City and getting away from the white supremacist sundown town that we have up here. And I get comments from her like, oh, be careful. Oh, be careful. Watch out for the crime. Oh, watch out. It's so bad. And we just spent 3 days there, and it was just the most peaceful, amazing. Everybody was kind. Even the homeless people that were around, we stayed in downtown. They were all respectful. We got the full Detroit city experience, and the food was just banging. Everything was so good. When we fell in love, and we got depressed when we came back to Traverse City because just the cultural devoidness, it completely, the lack of culture up here, the lack of respect and mutual understanding, and it's great to get away from the small town stare down, which you get constantly in Traverse City. People in Traverse City will even stare you down while they're driving and speed match you just to be weird and crazy. So yeah, I told her we're moving to Detroit, and once again, just constant doubting and backlash, and oh, be careful, it's bad area, and I say, what makes you say that? Have you been there? No, you haven't. You're just believing all of the white propaganda that black run areas, predominantly black and non-white, where we're going to be is next to the halal district, which thank God, glad to be around some Muslims and people that understand basic dignity and mutual respect. So yeah, even being from the South and knowing that she wanted to escape it, still, in her later years, is kind of racist. So that's how deep the gaslighting goes. That's how deep the generational hatred goes with white culture. Um, so you're as growing up in white culture, you're not allowed to talk about politics at all. It's just completely taboo. Once again, I mentioned earlier, they purposefully taboo certain subjects so that you don't get inquisitive, so that you have less of a chance of becoming an intellectual. And that's the whole game in white culture, apparently, is to mass generate sociopaths and narcissists. This is why, they want to keep you sheltered from these taboo subjects, and this is why, you can't ever talk politics. You could be vehemently racist, no problem, and everybody in your family will just brush it off. Some will even laugh at you. But yeah, you can't talk politics, religion. You can't talk about that. You can't question religion at all. And another thing with it is the demonizing of self-expression and the arts, and you find that in the church as well. And this is kind of how some of those crazy cult-like evangelical things have become so intrinsic to white culture, and you kind of just see it, just all those terrible things about white evangelicals has transposed into the culture itself, which is just really concerning, and it's a huge problem. And so yeah, with the suppression of the arts as well, we're taught not to have an expressive outlet. Not only are we culturally devoid, we're repressed from expressing ourselves. Definitely sexually repressed. Yeah, you can't even, mention sex in a conservative white family. And yeah, and so all those things transmute into what we see today, and why all these white crazy conservatives, evangelicals, are just crashing out so hard and they can't even live in reality, is because they can't properly express themselves. They can't, get their sexual repression needs taken care of because they're all hateful incels, and no one wants to sleep with them. And they can't talk about politics. You can't talk about religion. So you're just boxed in, essentially, into this just really cold, basic, cookie cutter mayonnaise world, where nothing really feels like it has a lot of depth. Everything is just so fake and shallow on the outside. So for me, being a musician, I got into, I learned just all the best music that I could growing up. Listening to like Stevie Wonder, Jamiroquai taught me a lot about racial inequity. Their early political stuff is just so good. Really opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. But that's why they suppress the arts, because it is a gateway to intellectualism. That's why, there's a huge stigma, and you hear all these conservative parents like, oh, my kids are going to art school, and they would rather not be supportive of that. And that's why it's so inherently ingrained into them. Why, a conservative parent will have a artistically talented kid that wants to go to art school and basically disown them. This is pretty normal in white culture. And not only that, but just be heckled by the rest of their, evil family for the rest of their lives until they cut them off. So, this is why we have all that. This is why this stuff is intrinsic to the culture. Because we have hundreds of years of these same practices going on and on, generations repeating it over and over, to the point where they don't even question it. They don't even think about it for 2 seconds. They just go through the motions and do exactly what their predecessors did, and demonize and hate and just utterly just box their children in, like I said, from being able to express themselves, whether it be artistically, sexually, in really any manner. And yeah, you start to question things, they get mean, they get brutal, and you know they will punish you. They'll withhold love, they'll withhold money, they'll dangle money over your head. That's what we really like to do in white culture. Is the love language is De Niro, and that's pretty much all they understand. So yeah, just some insight there into some more of why we have all these lunatics, why we have all these, wannabe commandos out on the street, intimidating and mass detaining and brutalizing our own citizens, is because we've had hundreds of years of this stuff, and the psychological impact of that is hitting us now. And it's scary. It's a scary thing, but it was an inevitability. If you ask me, the white crash out, the crash out of white culture was absolutely inevitable, because over time, everybody else in the country, other races, they see the hate, they see the bigotry. Toxic white people think, oh, no one can tell what I'm doing. Oh, no one, there's no consequences to my actions. But that's part of narcissism, is why they can't understand the consequences of their actions until they're hit with them. Which makes it a little more satisfying, but also at the same time, I'd rather just not have any of it at all. But yeah, that's the gist. There's been a mental health crisis in white culture pretty much since inception in this country, and just the white supremacy mindset and all the hate groups that have, made sure and ensured that, the generational hate is passed on, for hundreds of years. Ultimately, it was inevitably meant to lead to just complete mental instability, complete denial of reality, complete, just hate and vitriol for their fellow man. And nobody wants to live like that. This is why we've seen white American population just dwindle down over the years. White Americans make up 6% of the world's population, and declining, and steadily declining over the years. So this is why we also see them all so, vehemently going on about how they need to populate more, how you have more babies, and it's just everything is such a desperation move anymore, and Trump is basically just the megaphone for the crash out. He is just actively portraying all of the worst traits of white culture in real time, and just further enforcing our belief and assuredness that these things are actually happening and have been happening for so long. So, let's all just sit back and watch it happen, and, try to heal and try to work on our relationships with people that you haven't cut off yet, and just, be there for each other, love each other, support each other, express yourself, make some art, try something new. Now's the time. Hard times produce the best art, produce the best culture, and this is what we got to do right now. So, but there you go, guys. Inside the White Mind, episode 2. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe.